Hello and welcome back to Therapist Voices at ReachLink. ReachLink is a digital mental health counseling platform. My name is Jessica Hurwitz and I oversee our network of therapists. Today's guest is someone I know very well. About 13 years ago, I joined the EAP profession, and Jeff Mangrum took me under his wing. He introduced me to people in the field, even took me to networking events. We even road tripped from Florida to Alabama to present at a conference. I'm not sure if you even know this, but I was driving and you were sleeping, and I did get a speeding ticket in your car. But we can talk about that later. That was about 10 years
I
ago.
did not know that.
Oops. Jeff founded a company in the late 1980s, if I'm not mistaken, called Sane and Sober Theater, also known as SST. Jeff, share with us, if you would, a little bit about what SST is, how it started, what it stood for then, and what it's transformed into, which, from what I understand, is something very different and very exciting.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here. Yeah, I started SST in 1987. I I've always wanted to write, produce, direct, and work in the theater. And I got a scholarship to go to Bradley University, which is just south of Chicago, a few hours. They had a great theater program there. Unfortunately, I was doing a lot of pure research in the area of alcoholism and chemical dependency. I was an excellent scientist. In fact, I was so good. I was so good at my research that the other scientists there asked me to leave. They asked me to leave Bradley. I went over to Illinois State University because they had a better theater program there anyway. And
Obviously.
yeah, absolutely, where I continued my research. They got tired of me there as well. And so they sent me home. And I went back to Chicago and I decided maybe I should do something about this. So I got into a program of recovery. So I was sober, but I was insane because I had all of these skills and tools to work in the theater, but I couldn't do it because the only people I knew in this industry were people like myself, drunks and addicts. And they told me that if I didn't change my playpens and my playmates, so to speak, um, if I kept going to the barber shop, I would eventually get a haircut. So I decided, you know what? Why don't I start my own theater company? Which was nuts. I mean, it was absolutely nuts. But this is going back a ways. This was back in the late 80s. This was pre Oprah Winfrey, believe it or not. There was a time when we had no Oprah. Um, and I mention that because I think Oprah did a lot for opening the door to talk about mental health issues publicly, and some of these other shows as well. But I think that she was kind of on the and always treated it, I think, with a lot of respect. But this
Mhm.
was pre Oprah Winfrey, and I got this idea: why not write theater programs, plays, if you will, short version plays, combining comedic and dramatic scenes with informative material, discussing alcoholism and addiction as a disease model, because again, that was just really coming into its own at that time. So I wrote these pieces. I demonstrated what alcoholism and addiction looked like at home, what it looked like at work, and what avenues of help were available to them, primarily through employee assistance programs, these newfangled programs that had just really started to take hold with the passage of the Drug Free Workplace Act. I believe it was
Mhm.
1989, I think. Uh, and so I wrote a couple of pieces. I did a couple of demonstration shows. Some people from EAPs came to watch it. The next thing I know, we were doing I think we did 33 shows for our first client. It was UAW Electromotive Division in Chicago, and they had at that time 5,000 employees, and we were doing shows at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 11 o'clock at night and 3 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning, just doing them around the schedule. And they saw EAP utilization rate increase 120%. And when we saw that, we thought
120?
120%. So I knew that we had something special at that point.
Whoa.
And because of the passage of the Drug-Free Workplace Act, this is when a lot of the big EAPs that we know now, like the huge EAPs, were just cutting their teeth.
Yeah.
So they would hire us to come in. They would bring in a bunch of HR people. They would hire us to come in to do our dog and pony show, if you will. And then they would close. They would get up and say, we provide these EAP services. So they would sell it. So that's how I kind of wormed my way into the EAP world. And also, there wasn't even an EPA back then. There wasn't EPA. It was Almaca.
Almaca, right.
And so it was just an amazing opportunity to get out and perform these plays and encourage, because look, theater has always been an incredible education tool. It's how we taught each other since the ancient Greeks. Rather than getting up and talking about a subject, to get up and model the behavior and allow people to observe that and then come to their own conclusion, it's a much more engaging way. The transfer of learning is much stronger doing it that way. It's like if you're driving down the highway and you hear about an accident on the side of the road, chances are you're going to keep barreling down the road. But if we see an accident, our behavior changes. We slow down, we look, we become cautious. And so we learn more through our eyes than we do through our ears. And the way to do that is to model that behavior, demonstrate it, illustrate it, show it, rather than just get up and talk and tell about it. And I had a great run. During that period of time too, I had 4 full-length plays produced in Chicago. One of them at Steppenwolf, which was really exciting. And everything was honky-dory until 2008. And then it just pancaked. That was the subprime meltdown, right? The bank's too big to fail and all this stuff. Well, the first thing that went away was learning and development. Nobody was doing learning and development. We were doing 160, 170 shows a year. I think in 2008 we did 10. And I thought, we've seen ups and downs with the economy before, and it would come back, but it never did. Well, it didn't for quite some time. And so then I needed to get a real job after all that time. And I went to work for a couple of treatment facilities. So I learned that side of the business as well. I was a national director, business development for a couple of companies, and they mentored me in that space very well. Then 3 years ago, I was doing some work. I've always been working around safety sensitive. So DOT regulated employees, because they are regulated by the DOT, they have some special issues that they have to deal with. They can get violations and they can be removed from duty and all of this other stuff. And that was always a fascination to me. And so when 3 years ago, I decided I was going to strike off on my own again, but this time provide education services specifically to folks who have a DOT violation. And as you know, when somebody gets a DOT violation, they have to go see a SAP, have an assessment made, and then the SAP has to recommend education or treatment, one or the other. Nobody gets out of here alive, right? You got to do one or the other. And with all of my work in that space, the one thing that I saw kind of lacking was live well, not face to face, but through a Zoom platform, live education. A lot of the programs out there are click through programs where the client goes to this platform. They're shown some videos. They answer a few questions. Then they see some more videos and they answer a few questions. And then at the end, it spits out a certificate of completion for 4 hours of learning, or 8 hours of learning, or 12 hours of learning. Well, I always thought that that was kind of putting it didn't if the goal of this is to ensure a transfer of learning, that the client is actually walking away with some skills and tools that's going to help them prevent future violations. Well, how can you do that with a click-through program? I'm sure that there's some science out there that shows that there's some efficacy there, because any kind of education is going to be helpful. But we dialogue, right? They stop me, they ask me questions, we expound on different points of content that we're exploring. At the end of the event, I ask them all to generate an action statement. So coming from their words, number one, what happened? So taking ownership of the violation. Number two, what did they learn in our time together? And I think that that's important for the SAP to know. And I always break it down like this, like, I'm not a clinician. At the end of all of this, I am not going to know your life. You guys can be telling me exactly the truth, and I have no reason to doubt you. But being a recovering alcoholic myself, I know that we're not the most honest people when it comes to our drug and alcohol use. So I'm not going to know if you're struggling or not. But regardless of that, if you cannot apply the information that I'm sharing with you personally, with your personal circumstance, statistically speaking, there's somebody in your life that you love and that you care about that is going to struggle with this issue, or is struggling with this issue. And you may pick up the skills and the tools in our time together that enables you to say just the right thing at just the right time in just the right way. And it changed the whole trajectory of that loved one's life. Would that be worth the 4 hours and the $95 that you're spending to sit here with me tonight? And people get that. And people get that. Also, they come in and they're a little pissed off. They're a little, the DOT's got nothing better to do with its time than to crap on my life, right? Because they're not working. I approach that as well. And I have some, I have some, I don't want to say crash videos, but I have some videos that I show them at the very beginning. Their drug and alcohol related crashes, and talk a little bit about that, and say, look, these regs are in place for good reason. And the reason is there are people working in safety sensitive positions. They have no business being there. They need to be identified and removed. However, you eat a gummy at a friend's wedding 4 weeks ago, chances are you're going to test positive and you're going to be right in this process along with everybody else. But at least there is a process, because, many, many years ago, there was no process. It was zero tolerance. You tested positive or you refused to test, you were gone. No questions asked. You were gone. And companies pushed back on the DOT and said, hey, we're human beings. We make mistakes. The DOT relented and they said, okay, we'll build a process, but it's going to be time consuming. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be a pain in the ass. But everybody is going to get looked at. Everybody is going to have an assessment. And by law, you're going to have education or treatment, one or the other. And so I just encourage them. I set the tone right away. It's like, look, this is not a punishment. In fact, I love to have a good time doing this, because I feel like the work that we're doing in this room is really important. And I'm getting you one step closer getting back to work. That's a great thing, isn't it? So we have a great time in the class, and the material, the content is fresh and new and interesting, and most of the time, when I love to read the action statements that they write, and sometimes it's a sometimes it's I tested positive for weed. I learned weed is really, really bad. I promise I won't do weed anymore. So I get those, right?
But you get people you've been able to elicit them being real with you through the way that you've approached this. But that's you. That goes all the way back to your theater stuff. This all is such a continuation, and you're using it in such an amazing way.
Thank you, and I agree. I've had such strange experiences, work experiences around this field, and I've been able to see it from a lot of different angles. And so I think that enables me to approach some of this material with some humor, with some, but also, I share some things while we're doing it. I lost my dad to this issue. I lost my brother to this issue. And at one point toward the end, as we're talking about guidelines, I share that, and and so it's not just trying to make light of everything all the time. We drill down into some stuff, and my sharing prompts other people in the group to share. And by the end of the time, it's really strange. You wouldn't think that you can really connect with people on that Zoom platform so quickly, but it does happen. By the end of the education program, people are jumping off, they're sticking around, they're talking, they're sharing, they're giving tidbits of information. Hey, I found this company that is hiring people that have a SAP violation in the clearinghouse. I'm going there. They're going to fly me in. They're going to work over my documents with me, and they're going to get my return to duty test uploaded into the clearinghouse. And I'm supposed to be driving that night, and that gives a lot of hope to these folks because they're
Right. At the end of the day,
yeah,
there's nothing. What do you have if you don't have some hope for something?
exactly. And so, I try to help build them back up and understand, look, you hit a speed bump. You did not hit a wall, right? This is not the end. Yes, there are some companies out there that will not touch you while
Mm-hmm.
this SAP violation is in the clearinghouse. It rolls off
Right.
after 5 years. Um, but big companies like Knight, Hunt, ABF, their insurance company is not going to let them hire somebody with a SAP violation.
Sure.
But and I'm talking about the FMCSA, so the commercial driver's license modal right now. Um, that industry is 80,000 drivers short right now today. They need 80,000 drivers. So yes, there's a lot of companies out there that won't touch you, but there are far more companies out there that are desperate to have you come and work for them. And so they need to hear that message. I do research. There are certain websites that you can go to that specialize in CDL jobs, and you type in SAP friendly trucking company, and it will populate a list of national, regional, and local companies that are willing to work with you with a SAP violation. And so when they start to hear that, they're like, oh, okay. All right. Maybe it's not over. Maybe I haven't screwed myself really bad this time, because that's what they're fighting. And they're ashamed, right?
Yeah. Oh,
Because
yeah.
last week I had a guy, this morning, better example. I have a woman who was in a lot of back pain. She took her son's hydrocodone, right, to get out of that pain. Random drug test. She tests positive for opioids. 26 years she's worked with this bus company, and they fired her. on the spot after 26 years because they had to. It's in the policy. And she understands
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
that doesn't make that long walk out the door any easier. This morning, we did 7 private sessions, and this morning was the last one. And I said, listen, once you get through this, once you do the return to duty test, it's negative and it gets uploaded into the clearinghouse and you're taken out of prohibited status, go ask for your job back. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. And most companies write into their policy, if you test positive or if you refuse, you will be terminated immediately, period. It doesn't say you will be terminated immediately and you can never come back to work for us ever, ever. And imagine all of that experience walking out the door. That is institutional knowledge that is walking out the door. You cannot buy that. It's grown over time. And they now have to replace you with somebody who might test positive for THC next week. So it becomes a turn and burn. I told her, look, when you go and you ask for your job back, take your action statement with you because they're going to ask you about this violation. And if all you got is, I took somebody else's prescription medication, that's not a great response in an interview situation. Right. You look them in the eye and you say, yes, this is what happened. This is what I learned going through this process. This is how I'm going to use what I learned to avoid future violations. In fact, you need to hire me back because I guarantee the other bus drivers out there don't know that if you sign into a collection site and you're sitting in the waiting room waiting to give your sample, and suddenly your phone starts blowing up and it's your wife or your husband and it says 911 and you need to answer that phone call, but you don't want to share your business with everybody sitting in the waiting room. So you step out that front door to answer that phone call. That's a violation. That's a refusal. Most people don't know if you apply for 3 different jobs at 3 different companies, you're going to get 3 pre-employment screens. And if you decide that you're not going to go work for this job, you still have to respond to that pre-employment screen or that's a refusal. Most people don't know that CBD products contain trace amounts of THC. And if I have the kind of body that holds on to THC for a long time, 30 to 45 days is the estimate. I had somebody in my class, 87 days. It took 87 days for the THC to leave his system. So he is the kind of body that holds on to this stuff. If I'm taking a CBD product like a cream and I'm rubbing it on my hands, well, that's a transdermal patch. It's a nicotine patch, right? The THC goes right through my skin, right into my bloodstream. And if I'm using that cream every day, over time, I can accrue and store just enough to get over that 15 nanogram cutoff level and test positive for THC, and I never even got high. People don't know this stuff. And so, and by the way, people used to say I was crazy for saying that. There's a case pending that was pending in front of the Supreme Court 5 months ago. A truck driver is suing a CBD manufacturer. They're trying to get the case thrown out of court. The U.S. Supreme Court looked at the science, had content experts come in, and they said, nope, this case is going forward because we do believe what the science demonstrates is that you can accrue enough and store enough THC over time that, yes, you can test positive for THC on a random drug test. So it's not just me saying it now, it's the U.S. Supreme Court. So a lot of this stuff people don't know, Jess, and they, and again, this is stuff that comes up in discussion that you're not going to get with a click-through program.
No, right.
The other advantage of doing live platform courses is it's very rare, but I have removed people from the class because I highly suspected them as being intoxicated.
I wondered about that. I mean, your radar is on.
Right. You can't smell them, but you really don't have to,
Right.
especially if you're in recovery yourself. You know,
Right.
if you know, you know. And boy, I know. I mean, if somebody is in there because they tested positive for methamphetamine and they can't stop cleaning the house.
It's just my normal personality.
Or
Just a
they're
lot of
juggling or
coffee.
they're doing something, right? They're juggling with their feet. Yeah, there's something going on. There's something going on. And so I can, in my notes, because I do write summary notes and I include their action statement in that, I can write in the summary, I removed this individual because it's my strong belief that this individual was under the influence during the class. It was disrupting the rest of the class members, and I removed them. I don't say they were. I say that I highly suspect that they were under the influence. And again, those are very rare because most people, again, they're trying to get back to work. But a certain percentage of these folks are going to be in full blown addiction. And yes, they're not going to be able to, that they'll have those periodic lapses of control. One of the reasons why they're there, they're using their substance while they are in operation. And these are the folks that need to be identified and removed from this industry. I'm very clear about that. And we talk a lot about cannabis. Did you catch that the federal government moved THC from a Schedule 1 drug down to a Schedule 3 drug 2 weeks ago?
Yes, I actually got an email. I got an email, the DOT email.
THC from a Schedule 1 down to a Schedule 3 is that it will relax obstacles for them to do further research on it. That's all BS. That is all BS. The reason for doing that is the first major step in making cannabis legal across the country. That is bottom line, bottom line. And there's a reason for that. THC is only legal in 23 states, either recreationally or through the use of a medical card. That's 27 states that it's still illegal. And those 27 states are looking at the 23 states that where it is legal, and they're raking in the cash. They're raking in the cash in those states from cannabis sales. They want that, right? They want that. But their constituents, their state constituents, will never vote for legal weed. So the only option is to get the feds to legalize it on a national level. And then they can go, well, it's not our call. It's now legal everywhere. So we're going to have dispensaries. We're going to have to do this.
But how does
That's
that then, though, pivot your class? I mean, here you are in the middle of this. How does that?
So we talk about that. And look, the DOT is not backing down on THC. In fact, they've
Mhm.
already written safety carve out language. Paraphrasing, we're going to continue to test for THC. And if it's in your system, if it's in your body, it's going to continue to be a violation. And the reason for that is that there is a spectrum
Mhm.
of cannabis users, right? You've got on one side, you've got the weekend warrior, right? The person that might smoke a joint on a weekend, or maybe they're doing a THC gummy to sleep at night or relieve pain. And then on the other end, you've got Cheech and Chong, right? I love Cheech and Chong, but I don't want to meet Cheech or Chong driving a 140,000-pound truck at 70 miles an hour down through a narrow canyon road. The DOT does not have the time or the bandwidth to investigate these cases to determine, are you the weekend warrior or are you Cheech and Chong? So
Right.
we're just going to err on the side of safety. If it's in your system, we're assuming you're Chong and you're not going to be driving. It really is that simple. And when you break it down like that, people go, oh, okay, I get that. It's not a personal thing because it feels really personal, but it's not. It's not a personal thing. It is about safeguarding the traveling public. Safety first, making sure that people who should not be in operation are not there. So again, I think one of the advantages is, I don't think that a single person in my class is going to remember that a standard drink is zero point 0.6 ounce of pure alcohol, and that a glass of wine and a glass of beer and a shot glass are three different alcoholic beverages with three different volumes, but each contains one standard drink. I don't believe that they're going to remember that. What they will remember are the stories that we talk about, the information that is shared by the other people in the class, their experience, their desire to want to do better. We talk about what is most important to you in your life and what are you doing to protect those things? Because those things are precious. And if we're talking about reducing risk in order to protect those things, what does that look like? How do you gauge that? I mean, how do you gauge whether or not they really took something away? Now, the SAP is going to do a follow up assessment. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of SAPs recommend people to me is that they know the kind of result that they get. I believe that if the goal is providing education that is going to be meaningful, relevant, applicable to that individual's livelihood, this is where they get it. And it's exciting. I've been doing it. I'm going to be celebrating 3 years in April. And I just love it. I absolutely love it. I love my classes. I love the people in the classes. We get people from every walk of life. We've got truck drivers, we've got railroad conductors, we've got signalmen, we've got riverboat pilots, we've got flight attendants. Get a few pilots here and there too, which is kind of interesting because with the pilots, it's the HIMSS program, and it's usually mandatory 30-day inpatient, 28-day inpatient. But I'm kind of mystified, and I had like 3 or 4 airline pilots come through, and I'd never had a chance to really talk to them about that and why they're going through an education program when they probably are being subjected to the HIMSS program. So I hope to
You
to
have
kind of
done,
explore
have,
that.
am I wrong in thinking that you have done a lot of work with airlines?
Oh
That's
yeah,
something I always connect you with.
yeah. I've helped 168 Class A medical airline pilots, so commercial airline pilots, get through the HIMSS program. So,
Well, there you go. I guess that's what I was remembering. That'll do it.
yeah, and
Wow.
and and probably 3 times that number with flight attendants. I've been doing that work for I was about 17 years, I think it was. So, again, I always focused on safety sensitive. And so, again, that gave me great experience in sitting in here. But I get a lot of truck drivers, I get a lot of ship captains, and also light rail. So, stuff, people that fall under FTA. The other thing is mirror programs. So there's a lot of work out there that is safety sensitive, but it's not regulated by the
Right.
DOT.
Oh, yeah.
And so that company might have what's called a mirror policy. They're not regulated by the DOT, but they have a policy that they write that mirrors the DOT. So they have to go through the same process. So a lot of building trades, a lot of DOD and that doesn't fall under the DOT. They have mirror programs. Any kind of federal agency typically has a mirror policy, even like the Social Security Administration, something like that, where you wouldn't think that there would be any kind of safety
Right.
sensitive issue. but they have a mirror policy. So they refer those folks through there. Um, and we get people in there from all walks of life. And it's so funny, you'll have some pretty hardcore truckers sitting in there, and you might have 2 or 3 flight attendants, right, that are really gussied up, and they're playing their whole role of being a flight attendant, and I try my best to kind of incorporate their jobs, because if I'm just talking to truckers, then the flight attendants feel like they're being shorted.
It sounds like there's an art to it.
It really is. Whenever I get a flight attendant, I always ask them first thing, what is the spiel about the oxygen masks? And they're like, what? The little demonstration that you give around the oxygen mask. What's the point of that? What do you instruct us to do? And they go, oh yeah, we tell you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you help other people.
This is good.
That's why you're here. You're getting the oxygen mask. Now that you're getting this information, you're going to be able to help other people as well. Mm-hmm. This is not just to mitigate your violation. I'm telling you, you're here for a reason. Somebody out there needs this information. You've got it now. And you're going to find an opportunity to pass that information along, and it's going to help somebody else. And you can just see how their attitude changes about that whole thing. It really is amazing. And so I always try to, because of my experience, I can talk trucking. I can talk FAA and FRA and PHMSA, pipeline. A lot of pipeliners I get too, and so it's just by reaching out to them and talking their language. I also I ask, if I've got 3 flight attendants and 15 truckers, I asked the flight attendant, what was your training program like? Share with the truck drivers, what kind of training did you do? And it's typically 6 to 8 weeks, 12-hour days. They're not getting paid any money, and it's all focused on safety. Truck drivers don't know that. Truck drivers think that a flight attendant is a waiter in a bad restaurant at 30,000 feet. They don't know that they're there. Their primary purpose is to ensure the safety of the passengers on that flight. So no, I just try to engage them and let them know, and let them share a little bit about what it is that they do, so that other people have a greater understanding of, we're not just talking about driving a truck, we're talking about all aspects of safety. The very last thing I tell them is, it was a pleasure to meet you, but don't ever come back. I don't ever want to see you again. Stop tackling your own quarterback. Stop setting up obstacles in front of yourself. Don't ever come back. You're too savvy for this. You don't need to come back. So I do my best to tell them, don't come back.
Different. So there's, with how you offer the setup, is it like a blanket, like you said, 4 or 8?
4, 8 hours. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20 hours. Those are the, and then I do private sessions as well.
You do?
Yes.
How different is that? Is that like someone?
Private sessions?
Is that, yeah.
Private sessions are a blast. They're time consuming. The advantage of doing the privates is, especially if somebody doesn't have a real command of the English language. So I can take longer time talking with them, making sure that they're understanding the point. I've done work with people with a translator, and that actually worked out fairly well. It was a guy from Uzbekistan. I don't speak Uzbek.
You don't?
I don't.
You don't.
I haven't cranked that up on my battle yet. And so he had a translator, and she was extremely good. And I could give some information and then take a pause, let her translate. And then when she was done translating, I would ask her, does he understand what I'm talking about here?
Who's to know though? Like, you is it the same standard that, like, how do you know that the
they are getting
translators,
it.
yeah, how
Well,
does
because
that
I,
make
I
you
probe
feel?
them.
Uh-huh.
I probe them with questions.
Hmm.
I want this individual to answer this question. And so again, it's kind of just sitting there, letting the client talk with the translator and then the translator coming to me. It takes more time that would really slow down a regular class,
Sure.
but I can do that. The other advantage is if maybe somebody is a repeater, not necessarily with me, but maybe this is their second or
Hmm.
their third violation. And so I can really hone in, okay, what is going on with you, and tailor the material to supportively confront the issues that they're facing in hopes of coming up with a good action statement that they can live by.
So that's
So
amazing. That makes it almost a little bit concierge, if you will.
it is, it is concierge in an education sense.
Yeah.
And so that means real early mornings because I like to do them in the morning.
Uh-huh.
I like to have my evenings free so that I can relax and because you are on camera all day long, and you're in that bubble, and it's like driving. It's exhausting. You have to be looking at what's down the road. You got to be looking at what's in your side views. You got to be looking what's behind you, what that pedestrian doing, what's that driver doing. It's the same thing in teaching these courses. What is this client doing? What is this client doing? Is this client engaging, or do I need to bring them in? And it just is amazing at how depth that you can get. It's about 20 minutes into it, the glass falls away, and it just feels like we're in a classroom.
Wow.
It really does. The platform falls away, and people are engaged just like they would be in a classroom. It's amazing.